G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and in this video we're going to be looking at parallaxing and creating a simple parallaxing effect in Adobe Flash. What is parallaxing? Parallaxing is the effect that we get when something close to the camera and something further away from the camera are moving across at the same time. And we get this sort of illusion that the thing closer to the camera, or the perspective of the person or whatever, is moving faster than the thing further away. So as a quick example, I have this pre-made character-rooney dude here, which we animated in the frame-by-frame walk cycle tutorial. And if he were walking across the stage and he were this further away from the camera, he would probably get to the other side in maybe 5 seconds. Okay. Now, if we had the same dude, but he was further away, let's say about here, and he were walking across, he might get to the other side in, let's say 15 seconds. Okay. And that continues to happen that way. So if he were like really, really far away, that dude might get to the other side in maybe 30 seconds. Okay, so that visually is what is happening. So this guy, I've got a bit of a perfectionist. I've got to be even. There we go. Okay, so that's a simple way to look at how parallaxing works. Now I'm going to create a bit of an example for you. Now I'm going to use this little stage wireframe that I made, and I'm going to convert this to a symbol, and I'm going to call this simple parallax. Oops. Just to demonstrate visually what I'm talking about. I'm going to go inside this movie clip, I'm going to lock that frame and add a few frames beneath that layer. A few layers, I should say. And now I'm going to grab this object, which I've already made beforehand, this tree. I'm going to place it on the left side of the stage. Okay. I'm going to create 2 layers underneath this tree. Next one down, I'm going to shrink this tree to about this size and place him here. And let's add a bit of a tint to white at 20%. Just because we're being all fancy and adding an atmosphere. All right, and then I'm going to paste the same tree on the layer underneath that, bring the tint up to 40% and put that further back. So we can already see that we've created this fake depth by having the trees at different sizes and kind of merging into the atmosphere as it goes along. So the reason I'm adding that tint is because the atmosphere in this example is white, and the further something away from you is, the more it looks part of that atmosphere. That's the reason why very distant mountains often look blue, because it's like that atmosphere of the sky being blue kind of absorbs those mountains. So I'm going to pull these frames out to about frame 100 and create duplicate keyframes for these 3 trees. Now I'm going to drag this front tree all the way across, this next tree almost all the way across, and this last tree a bit less. And now when we create a classic tween, we can see that we create this fake 3-dimensional look, and that's what parallaxing is really useful for. And you see it often in side-scroller or platformer computer games quite often, where the platforms that you're on move faster across the screen as you run along them than the background, and the background moves slower, and it creates this really cool large kind of atmospheric effect. So if I test this by hitting Control Enter, and I'll go across to my test frame, you can see these dudes we have there. This is what I've just created, and in just watching that we can already see that it's got this very cool but really simple to pull off 3D effect. This is really useful. You can use it in scenes and animations, as an effect in games, which coders often are the ones that have to do it, is they kind of code the background to move slower at a further away thingy. My brain just stopped. Anyways. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a more complex example of this parallaxing. Okay, so I'm going to make this my camera, make it a bit larger. In my main timeline, I'm going to hit F8. I'm going to call this complex parallax. Hit enter. Now, if you want to edit these files or try and replicate them or use the clips that I've drawn, like the tree or the dude or whatever, feel free to download the reference file in the link in the description. Okay, so I'm going to go into this movie clip, lock this wireframe, and add maybe 5 layers underneath. Now I have a pre-made sky that I've got here, so I'm going to place that right here in the front. That is my sky, and I'll lock that because that is not going to move. If you have like a horizon or a very distant background, it can move in the parallax, but it's often really, really slow and hardly noticeable. I'm just not going to move it for the sake of simplicity. It won't make a huge difference in this example. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to, on each of these layers, make individually looping segments or movie clips. And I'll be able to alter individually how fast they scroll at and without affecting the rate at which the others scroll. So the first thing I'm going to be parallaxing is the ground, believe it or not. And what I've got here, I'm going to hide and wireframe these other layers. So this is my ground clip. I'll make it a bit bigger. Okay, and what I'm going to be doing is, you can see that this kind of fans out like that, and we do that to create this sort of fake perspective. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and I skew it by selecting the edge of the boundary box with free transform, with the free transform tool selected, which the shortcut for that is Q, which I use all the time. So I often kind of use my shortcuts without explaining what I'm doing, so please forgive that. Okay, so I'm just going to skew it and lock it into place so that it matches with that. Now the other thing I need to remember to do is, these are my this little dot here that I can drag around. I need to lock that to the very top of these objects. Reason being is that is the anchor point. Okay, so when it's tweening, and I'll show you what that changes. If I paste that here, now when I skew, it anchors where I place that little dot. If I put it down here, it anchors there. You see that? So I'm going to place the dot up there, and that means when it tweens, it won't make weird bouncy looking things. It'll just tween across the way I want it to. So I'm going to skew this across here, have it match, and there we go. All right, now I'm going to select my ground, all of them. I'll select that whole frame and hit F8, and I'll call this scrolling ground. Enter. Now we're going to go inside this movie clip, right click on all of my things selected and go distribute to layers. So now I've got one layer for each of these segments of ground. Okay, they each have their own layer. Now I'm going to need one more segment of ground, so I'm going to have to select this, add another one to the very right, and I'll show you why in a moment. And same thing, I'll skew it, have it match up. It's got to match up pretty accurately to be effective. Okay, cool. So I've got my ground ready to create the loop to. Now, just for the moment, I'm going to have it go for 100 frames. I can alter this later. I'm going to hit F6 to duplicate those frames, those keyframes, and I'm going to wireframe all of them and drag them across so that where these top corners, like here and here, the top corners of these ground segments are, match up perfectly where the one on the left is, like that. And now with my onion skin tool, with this little dot here where I select that, you can see that the frame before, the skew is different. So I'm going to skew all of these across to match the one before. There we go. So that's pretty much it. Now if I go back out and I create a tween, a classic tween between these, it almost creates a seamless pan across. Okay. So what's happening is we're also getting this somewhat unseemly stretch out as these ones at the front come forward. So what I'm going to do is, where it is out the most, which is probably around frame 50, I'm going to hit F6 and I'm just going to drag these in and out like that. And hopefully that fixes it. That happens sometimes when you have weird shaped objects that you tween. They can tween in somewhat strange ways. So I'm just going to match the bottom of that And let's watch that. So it's almost seamless. So same thing here at frame 25. I'm going to just drag these out. Oops, like that. And at frame 70, same thing. Just want it to be seamless all the way through. Okay, so now when I hit enter, we've got the ground going across and we don't have any of those cracks. And it should loop. So if I hit Control Enter and go across to this frame here, there we go. Yeah, so we have a fairly seamless loop happening. Now, another thing that's kind of happening is in the middle frame, everything's kind of out to this point more than it should be. So I'm just going to bring everything in so it matches with the bottom of the stage. Because you can sort of see that in the loop itself, it sort of pops out then in. So hopefully we don't get this bouncy look. There we go. We've got a pretty pretty flat looking looped ground pan. There we go. Yeah, so that works really well. That is my parallaxed ground. Now it's a little trickier to parallax something that is on the horizon. But now that we've got that out of the way, everything else should be relatively simple. Okay, so I'm going to lock my ground. I'm going to show my stage, and I'm going to create my close group of trees. But before I do that, I want to place my character, just so we have a reference for this guy to walk along. So let's see how he looks walking along the ground and see if that looks convincing. All right, so that looks pretty good to me. We've got our character walking along there. So I'm going to create my first group of trees panning across. So I'm going to lock my character on the frame under him. So this dude is on the very front frame. On the very back frame, we have the horizon, and the frame above that, we have the ground. But on the frame just behind this dude, I'm going to place a tree. I'm going to make it fairly large and place it about there. I'm going to copy and paste, and I'll place another one here. And for now, we're just going to have these loop. So I'm going to copy that and paste it with this tree right here on the edge. Wait, I want it to be exactly in line horizontally, so I'm going to have to shift drag, so that way if I go up and down it doesn't move as long as I'm in line with that. I'm going to have it just touch the edge right here. There we go. So with those trees selected, I'm going to hit F8, and I'm going to call this tree loop. Oh wait, what was the other one called? It was called scrolling ground. So I'll call this scrolling trees front. Hit OK. I'm going to go inside that, right click, distribute to layers. Now I don't need them on separate layers, but I'm just doing this so that I don't have to create another thing to another symbol to tween. I'm going to F6 at frame 100 and drag these across so that, so that it meets up perfectly with the first two, like that. Then I'm going to right click, create classic tween, and we have a looping tree scroll. So now when I hit Control Enter and I go across, we can see them scrolling across. Now, they don't look very good because we have them looping at 100 frames, but that's obviously a bit too fast. So we can alter the pace, the pacing of these. Let's bring it out to 150, see how that looks. Control Enter. Almost there. Let's bring it out to 200. And Control Enter. Perfect. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go back out and I'll bring the trees down just a little bit. Okay, so next thing's locking that and doing the same thing with the layer underneath. So we get our tree, this time with it more shrunken. I'm going to add a tint and add a little atmospheric tint by selecting this blue here. Maybe not the blue, maybe darker, the brown. I have to find the right thing to tint to. There we go, perfect. And that will be at 20%, 30%. Okay. I'm going to wireframe the front layers with them locked. I'm going to place the tree in the middle there, and I'm going to paste a bunch of trees. Like that. Now, I'm going to copy all of those and have a duplicate lined up exactly like that, but over here. So we have essentially the same group of trees in 2 segments. I'm going to select the whole thing, hit F8, and I'm going to call this scrolling trees mid. Hit enter. Enter that movie clip. Make sure that these are movie clips, not graphics, because movie clips loop without you needing extra frames on the main timeline. I'm going to distribute to layers. Now this will create quite a number of them. That doesn't matter for the moment. And these are going to need a lot more frames to loop because they're going to be moving slower. So let's go right all the way out to maybe frame 400, and let's see what that looks like. I'm going to hit F6 and bring these across again so that the wireframe matches our first clump of trees. Create a classic tween. That looks decent. Now when we hit Control Enter and go across. Okay, so I think the trees need to move a little faster. It's not a real problem, to be honest. I think it's the dots that's making it look bad, the dots that are in the ground. So to fix that, I'm just going to go inside my ground clip, select my dots and bring them down here so that the dots aren't where those trees are. And I think I'll speed it up anyway. So bring these, Control Alt C, and I'll paste at 300 and see what that looks like. So Control Enter. Much nicer. I'm very happy with that. And now we're going to create our last group of trees on the frame under that, and I'll wireframe those trees. So we drag across another tree. We're going to tint again, but this time we'll bring it up to 50%, make it smaller, and we'll add a whole bunch of trees. See, one of the simple keys that I generally keep in mind when I'm parallaxing things is to have less in the foreground moving and larger groups of things in the background, because then it's much more obvious that the things that are in the foreground that are moving along quite fast. Now, instead of having all of these on a separate layer inside the movie clip, I'm just going to hit F8 and call this, make a graphic and call it large tree group. Hit enter, and now I'm just going to do that again, hit F8, make a movie clip, and then I'll call this scrolling trees back. Hit enter. And now instead of having to distribute to layers, I can just tween this one clip. But for now, I'm going to duplicate that layer and drag it across here. And then I can add the tween. So I'll go out to frame, let's say 600. So it's going to need a lot of space. 600. Hit F6, drag this across so that the mesh matches like that, and create classic tween. Now I'm going to go back out, and let's have a look at what this looks like. Control Enter, and there we go. We have our forest parallaxing across the horizon, so the sky and the mountains and all that doesn't need to move at all, and it looks like this character is moving across there. So I'm just going to fully export that, and we can watch this in full screen. Okay, so this is our simple example, just with 3 trees panning across, and we can see really simply and efficiently how quickly and easily that can be done. And then with a more complex application of these things that we've talked about, we can create an entire environment like this in a relatively short amount of time that looks convincingly 3-dimensional, and have this character walk through this area that has depth and an atmosphere. So thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope it's been helpful, and until next time, see you later!
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.